things I'd like to say. One of them is we'd like to thank the church for the opportunity to be here. And one of the reasons is this wonderful piano here. When we first were thinking about putting this together, Steve was asking, is there a good piano in Fabius? And I was wondering, and then we found out there is an excellent piano in Fabius, and it's sitting right here. We also don't have to set up any chairs since they're already set up here. That's nice too. That's one thing. Looking ahead, October 1st, first Monday in October 1st, Patricia Finnegan is going to give a talk on the roots of Winston Churchill here in this area. I think many of you know the Jerome name, there's a Raleigh Jerome Road. Winston Churchill's mother was from this area. And so Patricia is going to talk about that. I said, well, tell me something about yourself. And she says, I'm just a Churchill enthusiast. And I think she really means it. So she'll be here, and that will be back in our regular place at the Fabius Community Center, right across the street. We're always looking for ideas for new programs. At some point soon, Sandy and I are going to get together, and hopefully some other people, and talk about what kinds of programs you'd like to see happening here. And so, what I'm going to do is leave these cards and my pen up by the collection plate. You don't have to contribute to the collection plate, but if you've got an idea, please jot it down. If you've got contact information, phone number, how to find somebody, please put that down. Don't steal my pen. We put that right up here, and I would be very happy. We've got a couple of ideas coming in, but we're always looking for new kinds of programs to do. Sandy reminded me that we have this will be a business meeting at the end of the year. We are electing officers. And if you look and see what we're doing and you think we're having so much fun, and you can do that too, or you want to run for one of our offices, let us know, and we will certainly put that down. And in our December meeting, we have a little dinner meeting. We have an election, maybe a little program, but we also have an election. We've got a crack team, but if you think you want to join, please let us know about that. That's coming up. Well, tonight, this is special. And Steve Jones, I think so many of you know, and his wife Doris, who taught so many years at the school, are here. And Steve has had a very interesting career. Lots of years in the music business, being a band director, teaching, and even after he's retired, he's still down there in Florida doing things with vocal groups and high-level musical and so forth. And so he came forward and said, I've got an idea for a program. And it sounded so good. And we were kind of calling it kind of a lecture recital, as you're going to see. And he's found, in between, Steve had his career in finance. So it was a great pleasure for us, Irene and I, to go to South America, the Galapagos Islands, Machu Picchu with Steve. We went there in 2008, just as the market was crashing, just as our retirement money was disappearing at the speed of light, and Steve could sit down in his kind and gentle manner and say, yes, it is as bad as we think. Only kidding. We're back. But he, as you're going to see, fine baritone voice, and his pianist is Marina Correlea, and you're going to see very fine, two excellent musicians working together up here. After a whole lot of practice during the summer, you're going to see that happen. Now, what are they doing? Well, Steve said, I'd like to sing some songs of Aaron Copland. Well, Irene and I have had many happy evenings in the second row of the center and listening to the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, and it's always a pleasure to hear an Aaron Copland piece. Always a pleasure. I am not an expert in music. I'm not a musician. I never even played one on TV. But even I can recognize Aaron Copland pieces. And so this is great. But I said, I didn't know anything you wrote had words. Oh, yes. And he began to sing for me. What are we talking about? Copland, with all of his accomplishments that you're going to see on the screen here, all of his accomplishments, reached down, as it were, to pick out songs that people were singing maybe in the field, lullabies, children's nonsense songs, black-faced minstrels, and a song from a revivalist, a song from almost anywhere, and putting with this tremendous musical interpretation that you're going to see happening before your eyes tonight. So the songs, the words may be sort of simple, but the genius of Aaron Copland was that he made these come to life and he put into these wonderful musical interpretations and arrangements. So this is what you're going to see tonight. Steve, we mentioned, Marina was born in Ukraine, began her study of the piano at the age of six, graduated from a master's degree from the Institute of Art at Kharkov, later earned a PhD in music from the Kiev State Tchaikovsky Conservatory. She's now, as a career concert pianist in her homeland, she came to the United States in 1996, is currently the staff pianist of the drama department of Syracuse University, my old hunting grounds, and the pianist for several musical classes at SUNY Copland. So please welcome Steve and Marina.
Well, thank you very much. I know why most of you are here, and you may be asking, why am I here? Well, this has been a long time in the making. When I was my sister and I were in elementary, junior high, and high school, my parents were very fortunate. They took us to New York 4 or 5 times a year. However, later on, there were a couple times that they went on their own, and I think I was in the 10th grade, and my dad came home, the mom and dad came home from New York, and my dad had purchased 2 albums for me. And I still have them. And the first one, because I was a clarinet major, I played clarinet from 4th grade through graduate school and 10, 15 years beyond that. But I was working on the Copland Clarinet Concerto. So he surprised me with a recording of the Copland Clarinet Concerto with Benny Goodman performing it, for whom it was originally commissioned. Well, it's a nice piece, and I like that. But on the other side of the recording are these old American songs of Copland's, sung by a African-American baritone named William Warfield, who some of you may remember was not an infrequent person on the Ed Sullivan Show. He had him on from time to time. Now, the other recording he brought back with him was a thing called Point of Order, and it's a documentary put together by the old CBS News guy, Eric Severide, and it is about the McCarthy hearings in the early 1950s, 1953 and 1954. And I didn't, at the time, I loved this because I liked history and so on, but I didn't understand all about this, everything about this that I should. What becomes really interesting is as we go on tonight, we are going to find that these two things are intricately linked together. So the neat thing for me is I get to perform this entire album because I've played the clarinet concerto many times, and now I get to sing the songs. So that's very exciting for me. Why Copland? Very quickly. You know, if I were to say to you, name 5 German composers, I bet you almost everybody could say, oh, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Mendelssohn, and Wagner. If I said name 5 Austrian composers, you might go Mozart, Schubert, Haydn, Mahler, and Johann Strauss. If I said French composers, you might say Berlioz, Bizet, Debussy, Ravel, Fauré. Russian composers, of course, Tchaikovsky, and Stravinsky, and Prokofiev, and Rachmaninoff, and Rimsky-Korsakov, and all the other Kokovs. But if I said name 5 American composers, and all of a sudden you scratch it, we live here. We live here. And in terms of composers not being people who write music for movies or music for general public consumption. But that music which was written for the concert hall. For the concert hall, typically the most respected and most well-known of all American composers is Aaron Copland. Behind him might fall 4 or 5 others, such as Charles Ives, name may ring a bell, Samuel Barber, of course, George Gershwin, his famous American in Paris, Rhapsody in Blue, and so on, plus all the wonderful songs that he and his brother Ira wrote together, and Leonard Bernstein, who most of us grew up with the young people's concerts that he used to do in New York City. There's arguments made for other people, John Williams and so on, but we don't have a big piece of what it is to be an American composer, and I think it's because most of those other composers that I named from Europe, particularly Bach and Beethoven and some of Mozart, they had patrons, and very wealthy people. The Prince Esterhazy would sponsor the composers, and they would pay for it. Most of the composers in America today come out of our college professors, and there aren't too many people out there able to make a living just being a composer. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit, along with Chuck, because I need to save the voice a little, about Aaron Copland. So let's just start with this little short biography. We'll flip through this pretty quickly. He was born in Brooklyn and was of Lithuanian Jewish descent, as it says. His name used to be Copland, but before they came to America, they changed it to Copland. And at 15, which is a pretty young age when you think about what kids are involved in the world today at age 15, he decided he wanted to be a composer, and he completely dedicated himself to that. At age 19, he took off and went to Paris, finished high school, boys' high school in Brooklyn, New York. He traveled off to Paris by himself to go to this very, very famous music school and study with strangely enough, or interestingly enough, a female composition teacher, musical composition teacher. Very much unheard of in those days, for sure. But she was very, very famous. And she was also the composition teacher for Burt Bacharach and Michel Legrand, Gianpaolo Menotti, who you may not know the name, but you know the story of All in the Night Visitors, and he wrote the music for that. Robert Russell Bennett, who, if we think about the early days of television, did anybody here watch Victory at Sea? Well, he wrote the suites for the music for Victory at Sea. And Karel Husa, who's our local resident composer, now retired at both Cornell and at the college. And he was my composition teacher for 3 years. I'm going to push through this. You can read these, and I also have a copy of all of these slides for all of you up here. And please take them. Staples did a nice job for me putting them all together. But when you start going through this, and you'll find that Copland befriended and was of just most of anyone involved in world culture of any type, whether it was writing, whether it was art, whether it was philosophy, whether it was criticism, photography, all of these things. One significant thing, you may be familiar with the paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe. She paints very, very large hibiscus and different flowers, and she lived in Taos, New Mexico. She was married to a very famous photographer, probably America's second most famous photographer, because we all know Ansel Adams, Paul Stieglitz. And he went to Copland and said, you think you could develop an American music? A music that was distinctly American, not European. Because at that time, the composers in the early part of the 19th or 20th century in America were largely writing music that sounded like it was written in Germany, or it sounded like it was written in Poland or Austria. But there wasn't anything that sounded like it was American. So he was challenged with this, and as it says, he was greatly inspired by these people, and particularly Stieglitz. And then he met up with a guy named Lee Strasberg. People said, well, who's Lee Strasberg? He ran an acting studio in New York called the Group Theater, which today is known as the Actors Studio. Well, who was in that? Well, you name it. Meryl Streep, Robert De Niro, Marilyn Monroe. The list just goes on and on and on. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of people. Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward. Most everyone you you've ever seen in a movie was, in fact, at the theater group in New York City. As it says, after 1936, the fascist attacks on Spain, a lot of Americans left the country. And as it says here, Thornton Wilder, Arthur Miller, Edward Albee, who wrote Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and some of them became communists, and including Ali Kazan, who they just did a year-long tribute for Ali Kazan, and the playwright Clifford Odets. The period between 1938 and 52 is when Copland wrote most of the stuff that you may have heard. The very, very famous Fanfare for the Common Man, and El Sol a Mexico, and Billy the Kid, and all of his ballets and so on. And the Clarinet Concerto from 1949. That was the other great thing that happened that year, besides I was born. And back in the Truman administration, some of you probably remember Truman. And he also wrote in 1950 and 52 these two sets of old American songs. And there's a picture of Copland with Mr. Bernstein. After 1960, Copland kind of lost a flair for wanting to compose, but he wanted to take his music to the world, and it was American music that he wanted to show the world. So he traveled the world conducting his own music with other orchestras. From 1960 until his death, he lived in Portland Manor, New York, which is down on the Hudson, and his home, as it says, is now a national landmark. Well, Copland's health deteriorated, and he died of Alzheimer's disease, ultimately, before, of course, they really knew that it was Alzheimer's disease at that time. So, now, go ahead with this, and this kind of wraps this up. Throughout his life, Copland was a great, great supporter of minority causes, especially trumpeting the efforts of African Americans and members of the gay community. Copeland knew from very, very early time on in childhood that, in fact, that he was gay. He's credited, and although he was credited with establishing the very, very first early American, or very first American in music, in 1953, he was called before the McCarthy Committee. And which was interesting about this, that was a Senate committee. There was also a House committee doing the same thing, trying to root out communists in the government and in the arts. The House part of it, I'm just going to skip ahead for a moment, was known as the House Un-Americans Activities Committee. And that was not disbanded until 1975. They were still out there trying to root out communists. The Senate portion of this that McCarthy was in charge of disbanded in 1956. He sicked his special prosecutor, Roy Cohen, on Copland, and they tried to disgrace him because he was, as being a homosexual, because he would refuse to cooperate with the committee. They're asking him about all of his friends, of course, and he would not rat out on his friends, some of whom were communists. And so he just continued to persevere, and when they accused him of being a homosexual, he said, yeah, so, and went on with his life. And he let his music speak for him. And to this day, of course, his music carries the real message of what Copland was about.
Steve, let me add something here. On a recent trip, Irene and I stayed overnight in Wheeling, West Virginia. And every time I go near there, or even hear the name, I think of Senator Joseph McCarthy. And the reason for that is that back then, early 50s, he worried about getting reelected. And he called himself Tail Gunner Joe, which is, in terms of flying, being the tail gunner is one of the most dangerous, heroic things you do in the entire airplane. He didn't really do that. He was actually trained to do that, but he never did that. And so he went to a friend, and he said to the friend, I need an issue. I've got to get people excited about me. Well, some of you probably never heard this man speak, but he was not charismatic. He was not handsome. He was not articulate. His voice was kind of sing-song, monotone. It was not good. And the friend, who I think was a priest, he said, communism might work. This is becoming a big problem. why don't you say something about communism and become the leader in that? He was invited to go to a women's group in Wheeling, West Virginia, and he went. Now, I don't know what he talked about, but at some point, the inspiration, the lightning hit his head, and he pulled out of his pocket a couple of pieces of paper, and he said, do you realize I've got right here the names of 200 people who are communists and are currently working in our State Department? Then he went home, I guess back to D.C. The next morning, he opened the paper. He couldn't believe it. Everybody knew about this. They're clamoring, give us the names, give us the papers. He was famous. And from that, he began to be the person who was, he thought, the major anti-communist person. And as one of the slides is going to show, over 600 people were prosecuted by him and his committee. He realized, because a lot of the artists had studied in Europe, as Steve said, were part of the international scene, the European scene, they had ideas. They'd lived through the Great Depression, and they saw what a terrible shape our economy was in for so many years, and wondered, maybe there's a better way. Maybe it's communism. Some attended meetings, some joined the party. And so McCarthy had a lot of people to deal with.
So as Chuck said, 653 people were brought before this committee, and if you didn't cooperate, they just, whether you were gay or not, they just ridiculed you and disgraced you in the public press and so on as being that, trying to ruin your career. And where our country was at that time, it did ruin many, many careers. Ironically, though, it later became known that Special Prosecutor Roy Cohen was in fact gay, and it was presumed that McCarthy himself was gay. And so there's a kind of just an interesting irony to this whole thing.
Yeah, and I think, McCarthy was trying to get the Army to do something, favors for someone named Shine.
Private David Shine.
Private David Shine, who was apparently a partner of Cohen.
Fortunately, Copland's career and life were not seriously impacted by those McCarthy hearings, as we said. Al Hirschfeld. Is anyone familiar with the caricatures of Al Hirschfeld? They used to appear in New Yorker magazine on a regular basis. He did this one of Aaron Copland. And what I thought was interesting about it was it says Hirschfeld 60. So I said, what's that? Does that mean that Hirschfeld was 60 years old when he did it? He did it in 1960. Copland was 60 years old when he had this done. The answer is no. What Hirschfeld did after 1945, when he had his daughter, his first daughter, is that in all of his caricatures after them, hundreds of them, he would disguisedly put his daughter's name somewhere in that caricature. So in that caricature is his daughter's name. Her name is Nina, N-I-N-A. So if you look very carefully, you can see that. Well, the number 60 actually means that Nina's name is in that caricature 60 times. Okay, and just by saying that, of course, that's certainly a giveaway. Because, and I have copies of all these slides for you, because it's in the tie. The pattern in the tie just says over and over again, Nina, 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 Nina. So that's Al Hirschfeld, the super famous caricatures. The Old American Songs, there's 10 of them. They're in 2 sets. The first 5 were written in 1950. The next 5 were written in 1952. William Warfield, the gentleman on the right, premiered the first set here in America. Very famous British composer, Benjamin Britten, who was visiting Copland and heard these songs and said, gee, could I get a copy of those? And he said, sure, when I'm done, I'll send it to you. Well, not only did he send it to Britain, but Britain then took it without Copland's permission and premiered the works in Britain before they were ever premiered here in the United States. As Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story. In 1955, Copland loved these songs in the piano setting, but he thought, you know, I could even add more color if I could orchestrate. And I could use this instrument for this and this instrument for that, and so on. And that's what he did, so that was that. Those are the 5 songs. The first one's a minstrel song. Campaign song. The campaign song, oh, the minstrel song. Here's what I want you to think about. Guy's floating on the Ohio River. It's a foggy morning, and he comes out and he has to have a call. And he calls out because he doesn't want to run into another boat on the river. So he calls out, and then he hears the call coming back to him, which typically means that's from another boat. And this happens throughout the song. The Dodger. This is just true. Well, let's flip through these. The first one, the minstrel song, is from pre-Civil War. And what is a minstrel song? Blackface minstrelsy. People actually dressed up, took burnt cork, put it on their face, and it became the very first American theatrical form. The minstrel show or minstrelsy consists of skits, variety acts, dancing, and so on, all with white people dressed up in blackface. This is mind-boggling to me. It existed as a professional entertainment until 1910. Amateur performances and in high schools. It was okay in this country until we got into the 1960s.
Steve, did Al Jolson do this?
Yeah. Yes. This guy, Dan Emmett, was the founder of the first professional troupe of blackface minstrels, but he's even more famous than that. He composed the song Dixie. And in case you don't remember, Dixie became the national anthem for the Confederacy. So that was his claim to fame. The second song, this is real key. I'm going to talk about 3 songs and then sing them. The Dodger song is a campaign song from the 1884 election between Grover Cleveland, who obviously won, and James Blaine. You can read that. They think the song came from the western states first.
The western, during the agrarian protests following the Civil War.
Correct.
There are at least 9 satirical verses.
Copland picked 3. Each verse sort of mocks a particular profession. Because it was a campaign song, I suspect you understand what one of those professions were.
It became linked to the election of 1884 of Democrat Grover Cleveland. I remember in school they taught us the only president to have 2 non-consecutive terms ran against Republican James Blaine. Blaine was connected to the financial and political corruption of Boss Tweed and New York Tammany Hall, and this song was used to belittle Blaine. However, Bachelor Cleveland had his own problems. He was involved in a paternity scandal, and the Blaine Republicans all rebuked Cleveland, claiming, "Mama, where's my pa?" However, after the election, the Democrats responded, "Gone to the White House, ha ha ha."
The third song, Long, Long Ago, is a ballad. And a ballad is a song that tells a story. And I'm going to skip to the very end of this. The most important part of that is that this particular story is of the story of a slave who was brought here to this country. And these were the remembrances he had of his love, who was left back in Africa and who is now, of course, presumed dead. So those are the first 3 songs, and we're going to start with those. I brought this other chair out here, and I thought, well, maybe I'd actually talk to Copland, but that bit was used last week, so I'll let that go.
Thank you, Glenn.
High roll the boatman row, floating down the river, the Ohio. High roll the boatman row, floating down the river, the Ohio. sing the boatman up to everything. And when the boatman gets ashore, spends his cash and works for more than dance. The boatman dance, oh dance, the boatman dance. Oh dance all night for broad daylight and go home with the gals in the morning. High row the boatman row, floating down the river, the Ohio. I went on board the other day to see what the boatman had to say. There I let my passion loose and they crammed me in the calaboose. Oh dance, the boatman dance, oh dance, the boatman dance. Oh dance all night, broad daylight, and go home with the gals in the morning. High row the boatman row, floating down the river, the Ohio. The boatman is a thrifty man, there's none can do as the boatman can. I never see a pretty gal in my life, but that she was the boatman's wife. Oh dance, the boatman dance, oh dance, the boatman dance. Oh dance all night, bright daylight, and go home with the gals in the morning. High row the boatman row, floating down the river, the Ohio. Moving on to the Dodgers song. Yes, the candidate's a Dodger, yes, a well-known Dodger, yes, the candidate's a Dodger, yes, and I'm a Dodger too. He'll meet you and treat you and ask you for your vote, but look out, boys, he's a dodging for a note. Yes, we're all dodging, 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 dodging. Yes, we're all dodging all the way through the world. Yes, the preacher, he's a Dodger, yes, a well-known Dodger, yes, the preacher, he's a Dodger, yes, and I'm a Dodger too. He'll preach you a gospel and tell you of your crimes. But look out, boys, he's a dodging for a dime. Yes, we're all dodging, 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 dodging. Yes, we're all dodging all the way through the world. Yes, the lover, he's a Dodger, yes, a well-known Dodger, yes, the lover, he's a Dodger, yes, and I'm a Dodger too. He'll hug you and kiss you next two songs, next one's called The Simple Gifts. It is a Shaker song. Shakers were a religious sect related to the Quakers. They felt that by dancing, they'd be more ready to accept or be able to accept the Holy Spirit. So they became known as shaking Quakers, or they just dropped that and they just called them Shakers. So it was an interesting sect. It didn't last very long. Their spiritual leader, Mother Ann Lee, promoted equality between the sexes, believed that, however, she thought that sex was the root of almost all evil and all sin. And she demanded and preached very strict celibacy. Think about that for a minute. Shakers lived in utopian communes, of which there's two right here in New York, one near Niskayuna and another one at Waterville. The old houses and all are still there. They supported themselves by selling Shaker handmade furniture, and they raised orphan children and foundlings. They became extinct, however, for what might seem sort of obvious reasons. However, although strict adherence to celibacy did seem to limit their numbers, it's always more complex than that. The Industrial Revolution came along in the later half of the 19th century, and we started making furniture in factories. There's no possible way one could compete making handmade furniture with the much cheaper furniture made in factories. Beyond that, many states started establishing orphanages, and they made the adoption of children by religious groups illegal, because many of the religious groups were basically using these kids as indentured workforce. So the Simple Gifts became the embodiment of the Shaker spirit, and it's almost in every Protestant hymnal everyone's ever seen. Let's move ahead. The fifth song in this set, I Bought Me a Cat, is just a fun tune. It is just a hoot of a tune. And I know it was taught right over here in the Fabius Elementary School, at least until 2008, because my wife Doris used to teach it. And it was crazy. She'd go to the closet, and she'd bring out this brown box. And she taught first grade mostly. And she opened this brown box up, and she took out something like this. She took out this, and the kids are looking at her, and she didn't realize, and a single person in her class understood what this was. Even CDs, are almost 30 years old now. So the idea of an LP record was something a 6-year-old, had just no concept of whatsoever. But it's just a really good, fun song. There's a lot of information on it. There's information in the slide handout. So without any ado, we're going to finish this setup with Simple Gifts and I Bought Me a Cat.
Yeah, let me say just something here at this point. I love this picture. And if you look at all of these people dancing around, shaking around, I think it's fair to say those Shakers knew how to build a good solid wooden floor. Because if they didn't, these people would all be in the basement. This must have been an amazing thing.
Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed to turn. Turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just bright. 'Twill be in the valley of love and delight. I bought me a cat, my cat pleased me. I fed my cat under yonder tree. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a duck, my duck pleased me. I fed my duck under yonder tree. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a goose, my goose pleased me. I fed my goose under yonder tree. My goose goes quack, quack. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a hen, my hen pleased me. I fed my hen under yonder tree. My hen goes shimmy shack, shimmy shack. My goose goes quack, quack. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a pig, my pig pleased me. I fed my pig under yonder tree. My pig goes riffy, riffy. My hen goes shimmy shack, shimmy shack. My goose goes quack, quack. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a cow, my cow pleased me. I fed my cow under yonder tree. My cow goes moo, moo. My pig goes riffy, riffy. My hen goes shimmy shack, shimmy shack. My goose goes quack, quack. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a horse, my horse pleased me. I fed my horse under yonder tree. My horse goes neigh, neigh. My cow goes moo, moo. My pig goes griffy, griffy. My hen goes shimmy shack, shimmy shack. My goose goes quack, quack. My duck goes quack, quack. My cat says, fiddle I feed. I bought me a wife, my wife pleased me. I fed my wife under yonder tree. My wife goes, honey, honey. My horse goes, neigh, neigh. My cow goes, moo, moo. My pig goes, griffy, griffy. My hen goes, shimmy shack, shimmy shack. My goose goes, quack, quack. My duck goes, quack, quack. My cat said, fiddle I feed. Chuck, we're going to step off for just a second while you go through the next 3 songs with them.
Okay.
Okay?
This picture here has a particular significance for Irene and me because we have a family friend who said whenever he looks at us, he thinks of Grant Wood's painting. And this is it. And somebody asked, is he still your friend? And we have to say, yes, he is still our friend. But somehow when he looks at us, he thinks of this. And that's the way it goes. How do you explain it? I think what you're seeing is, again, you're seeing Eric Copland reaching down. Copland, with his massive amount of education, his incredible amount of music education, who has spent time with writers, with artists, with photographers, with all of these different people. His background is immense, and yet he sees something in some of these fairly simple worded songs that's part of American history, and he wanted to preserve it, and he wanted to make it beautiful, and you saw what can be done when you have skilled musicians doing this. Well, here's the next series of songs that you're going to hear. Little Horses. The origin is not fully known, but it's thought to be African American and from the southern states. Children's author Lynn Ellen Lacey theorizes the song was originally sung by an African American slave who could not take care of her baby because she was too busy taking care of some other baby, no doubt a white baby. Additional titles include Hushaby, All the Pretty Little Horses, Hush Baby Hush, the version founded in part in John and Alan Lomax's folk song So here's something. Everybody's heard lullabies. Everybody knows something about this. And yet Copland could see some beauty here and some truth and seeing something that he could bring great music to. A couple of these things are things that have made their way into the hymnals, have been sung in churches, and so some of these may sound familiar to you. The original melody and words are credited to John G. McCurry, a Georgia farmer. But as you can see, he's much more than a farmer. Look at the second line. It was included in McCurry's songbook, The Social Harp, first published in 1855. Also, some of these things, as you see up here, and a great attempt was made by the Library of Congress, to preserve these things. And some of these old songs, somebody went to the Library of Congress and sang them, and they recorded them to make them part of a historic record. A few years ago, they made a tremendous effort to get people to volunteer to interview World War II soldiers and sailors and service people because they knew these people are leaving us. They want to get the record down. Same thing's happening here. Later published by musicologist George P. Jackson as one of 550 spiritual folk songs of early America. It is Down East Spirituals in 1939. The evocative song became a popular call to worship in the mid-19th century. Zion's Wall was also used as a glorious finale, The Promise of Living from Copland's opera. This man wrote everything, symphonies, opera, ballet, movies, down to taking some of these simpler songs and adding such beautiful music to them. Golden Willow Tree.
Golden Willow Tree. It's a really simple song. Way too many words up there. It's a pirate story. It's about a ship that meets another ship. They don't know what they're going to do. They have a little boy. The little boy comes up with a plan. He goes, he swims over, sinks the other ship, comes back. Most unfortunately, the captain of the original ship won't let him back on board. He obviously can't go to the other ship because it sank. So he decides that he will, instead of swimming on his back or swimming on his breast, he decides this time he's going to swim on his head, and he'll swim to the bottom of the deep sea. And he commits suicide. And the song ends. So those are the first three of the second set.
Hush you by, don't you cry. Go to sleepy little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses.
Blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6 a little horses. Blacks and bays, dapples and grays, coach and 6
a little horses. Hush you by, don't you cry. Go to sleepy little baby. When you come, join us in singing the praises of Zion, the praises of Zion. Oh, fathers, don't you feel determined to meet within the walls of Zion? We'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion. Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come join us in singing the praises of Zion. Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come, join us in singing the praises of Zion. Oh, fathers, don't you feel determined to meet within the walls of Zion? We'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion. Ship in South America, crying, oh, the land that lies so low. There was a little ship in South America. She went by the name of the Golden Willow Tree, as she sailed in the lowland, lonesome low, as she sailed in the lowland so low. Hadn't been a sailing more than 2 weeks or 3 till we came inside of the Golden Willow Tree, as she sailed in the lowland, lonesome low, as she sailed in lowland so low. Up stepped a little carpenter boy, says, what will you give me for the ship that I'll destroy? I'll give you gold or I'll give thee. I'll give you gold or I'll give thee the fairest of my daughters as she sails upon the sea. If you sink them in the lowland, lonesome low, if you sink them in the lowland so low. He turned upon his back and away swum he swum till he came to the British Rovery. He had a little instrument fitted for his use. He bored 9 holes and he bored them all at once. He turned upon his breast and back swum he swum till he came to the Golden Willow Tree. Captain, oh captain, come take me on board. Oh captain, come take me on board. And do unto me as good as your work, for I sank them in the lowland, lonesome low. I sank them in the lowland so low. Oh no, I won't take you on board. Oh no, I won't take you on board, or do unto you as good as my word. Though you sank them in the lowland, lonesome low, though you sank them in the land that lies so low. If it wasn't for the love that I had for your men, I'd do unto you as I'd done unto them. I'd sink you in the lowland, lonesome low. I'd sink you in the lowland that lies so low. He turned upon his head and down swam he. He turned upon his head and down swam he. He swam till till he came to the bottom of the sea. Sank himself in the lowland, lonesome low, sank himself in the land that lies so low. The last two pieces, super famous hymn. I would expect that most people know this. What was interesting about it is that he was a professor. Robert Lowry was a professor initially of belles lettres at Louisburg University. He became a minister in Brooklyn. He wrote this in 1864, of course, also in the time of the Civil War. But there was a tremendous yellow fever epidemic in New York City, and hundreds of people were just dying daily. And so he was wondering if, in fact, they were going over across the river, and would they meet again at the next world, at the throne of God. So that's at the river. And the last song of the set is really, really interesting because Copland changed the words. As it says, this song was originally known as Sambo's Address to the Brethren. And it was a pre-Civil War blackface minstrel song which presented a solution for what they perceived as a problem back in the early 1830s and 40s and so on. And they suggested that all of the blacks in the country, of course, emigrate to Haiti. And Copland found that was just a horrendous, horrible thing. So he took this song, preserved parts of it, but any place that he found repugnant, he stuck in nonsense words. And his nonsense words were ching-a-ring-a-ring, ching-ching, hoarding-a-ding-coom larky. And I guess that disguised it all just enough. So these are the last two sets, and I thank you so much. I have a couple other quick thank yous. I want to thank most of all my wife. She has listened to this music for about 5 months now. And in fact, I had to sign off and say that after tonight she'd never have to hear these again. But I do thank you because you've had to put up with a lot over all this time. And of course, my wonderful, wonderful accompanist, Marina. It was very hard finding someone to take on this project. I talked to several accompanists. One of them referees softball games in the summer and didn't want to do it. Somebody else likes to go fishing in the summer. He didn't want to do it. So anyway, Marina was available and she said yes, and I so appreciate it. Thank you. I am going to take a moment to ask Marina to play this hymn as you might hear it in church, just the first few measures of it. Because Copland did something quite different with it. How many people have heard that? All right, super, super. Or not so super, because now you're here. Copland did something very different with it, and I think it's just very, very beautiful. Shall we gather by the river, where bright angels' feet have trod? With its
greatest note I have to sing is in the first song from the last set and the last song of this set. And it's just interesting. They wrote them 2 years apart, but you can find all of this sort of almost a, oh, help me out with the word, palindrome type thing. If you start in the middle and start working backwards from the middle back to either end of these both sets together is just amazing, the genius that went into all of this.
Ching-a-ring-ring-ching-ching, ho-a-ding-a-ding-cum-larky, ching-a-ring-ching-ching, ho-a-ding-cum-larky. Brothers gather round, listen to the story of the promised land and the promised glory. You don't need to fear if you have no money, you don't need none there to buy you milk and honey. There you'll ride in style, coach with 4 white horses. There the evening meal has 1, 2, 3, 4 courses. Ching-a-ring-a-ring-ching, ching-a-ring-a-ring-ching, ho-a-ding-a-ding-cum-larky. Ching-a-ring-a-ring-ching, ho-a-ding-cum-larky. Nights we all will dance to the harp and fiddle, waltz and jig and prance, pass off down the middle. When the morning comes, all in grand and thunder, stand out in the sun and hear the holy thunder. Brothers, hear me out, the promised land's coming, dance and sing and shout, I hear them harps a-strumming.
Couple things. One of them is, I see Pam Poland came in. You want to say, oh, wait a minute, maybe you do. Sandy announced this particular thing happening in Homer, and Pam wanted to say a few words.
Sunday at 2 o'clock on Main Street near the town hall, and all will be revealed about Amelia Jenks Loomer.